area is from the engine in the tail section of the L-1011. It is a wide-body jet. It is capable of carrying something in the neighborhood of 250 people. We do not at this point know how many people were on board this flight, Delta Flight 191, out of Fort Lauderdale. It left, as John was telling us a short time ago, after 4 o'clock from Fort Lauderdale this afternoon and was due in just before 6 o'clock at DFW Airport when apparently the crash did take place. Dave Cassidy now is at DFW Airport with more information. Dave?
Tracy, there's been a lot of speculation about lightning. I can tell you in driving out here, there was a lot of lightning coming eastbound from Fort Worth. Right now, there are more thunderstorms that it would appear out toward the Hurst-Euless-Bedford area from here. We point that out partly, though, to reassure people that we're seeing planes taking off and landing here because of where the plane has gone down, which is the, I hope I don't get my directions wrong, the northeast corner by the, other than the one man who may have been decapitated when his car was hit, we don't know of anybody else seriously injured on the road. I might ask, just so people understand what happened to that car, is it possible for us to go over and take a shot of what the plane did to the car? If you're seeing that, that's what's left of the car where we're told a man was killed. The plane, after it was apparently struck by lightning, came down onto 114, or the wheel did, hit the car you're seeing, and then continued over, perhaps it doesn't appear to have a lot of debris between where it hit the car and where it ended up. It may mean that they went back up into the air a little bit. You can see there are light poles all along between 114 here and where the water tanks are. And those light poles are standing, so the plane was certainly not skidding right there. We may be seeing some debris closer to the water tanks. It's difficult, I guess what we're trying to say, to figure out for probably all evening. This is going to go on for quite a while. That's about all we know new here. Nan Goplerud is back toward the triage center trying to gather information there. Of course, we have crews around the proximity. And Tracy, back to you.
Okay, David. Can you hear me, David?
Yes, can.
Okay, let me ask you this. First of all, you were talking about the number of people who are in the area. It looks from your picture as though there are still a number of people arriving. Are these bystanders, witnesses, people who just want to gawk, or are these emergency people who are coming into the area now?
There are a lot of cars. I'm afraid we've got a lot of gawkers. There's a service road directly south of here, which has people lined up. Police are asking people who to leave that area. The ambulances are still arriving. Other than, there are a few people who are here to help tell the police what happened, as is the gentleman we interviewed about 10-15 minutes ago whose car was hit. They want to know if there are other casualties here on the road. When we first got here, there were 2 or 3 ambulances working 114 itself and not the crash site. But at the moment, everything is down by the plane. Ambulances trying to get through the traffic. I'm sure our helicopter shot is giving you a better picture of how far the traffic is stacked up. But it's at least a half a mile to the west, and we can't see how far to the east, but probably...
A moment ago that operations at DFW Airport were at a standstill. However, I believe I heard you say just a moment ago, planes are continuing to take off and land. What is the situation?
Well, 5 minutes ago, planes were taking off and landing. Now, I just don't see anything at the moment. I do see a plane due south considerable distance with its lights on, appearing as if it's heading in for a landing. Planes have been taking off and landing ever since we got here, and one is taking off right now. If you want a visual evidence of that, perhaps we can just take a picture of it. You can see the thunderhead type clouds there to the west. This time of night there are usually dozens of planes coming in and out of here because this is literally the Friday evening and Sunday evening are the busiest times of the week at DFW, and I guess most other major airports now. If a plane was trying to come in with the way the thunderstorms were building here, the pilot of the Delta...
Hey, Dave, we have information back here that the airport is operating, but I guess the best vantage point to actually see that is up where Gary Reeves is. Gary, have you seen planes been taking off recently, or are operations at a standstill there?
Yeah, we have seen quite a few planes taking off in the area here. And as Dave was saying, as we were flying out to the scene here approximately 1 hour ago, what we could see then was a lot of lightning, several different thunderstorms in the area around DFW. I just got a report from our Dennis Johnson, our medical reporter who is at Parkland Hospital right now. He tells me he's just seen an ambulance arrive there, and it had, he said the ambulance that he saw had 3 men and a woman in it. One of them had an arm in a sling. Another person was in a wheelchair with a cut face. The third person was able to walk in under her own power. So he says now that there are a total of 6 people who have arrived at Parkland, and the first 2 came in by care flight. And I'm going to try to get Cliff to point the camera over towards a thunderstorm, and you can still see that there's a lot of heavy rain. It's moved off away from the airport, and the planes are taking off and landing pretty much, it seems, as normal. But except for that plume of smoke and all that wreckage that you have seen, which lets everyone know that it is a long way from normal right here, right now, and it may be a long time before it is a normal scene again. Back to studio.
Okay, Gary, thank you very much. Of course, I think one question that we should try to address now is exactly what might happen to an airplane, and particularly an aircraft of this size, if indeed it was, as many people are speculating in a rather educated way, what happened at DFW Airport, that the plane was coming in, struck by lightning. What happens to that plane? John Criswell is a pilot, and John, perhaps you can shed some light on that.
Hopefully, Tracy. Generally what happens is nothing happens. Planes are struck by lightning often, more times than people probably realize, unless a vital part of the plane is struck. For instance, if an instrument is struck and put out of commission, the plane is then, in a sense, blinded if it's on instruments, which obviously this plane was this afternoon. If an engine is struck, the engine may stop. If a fuel cell in a wing is struck, there may indeed be a fire. Purely speculation at this point, but witnesses say that there appeared to be a bolt of lightning which came from the cloud toward the ground and did strike this airplane, and then momentarily blinded by the flash of bolting. It's hard to know at this point what might have been caused. Channel 8's Dennis Johnson, we understand now, is standing by at Parkland Hospital with more on victims who have been brought there. Dennis, what can you tell us about Parkland's triage unit?
Okay, John, the emergency units from the crash site are starting to roll in. Paramedic units from the Dallas Fire Department, the Grapevine Fire Department. At this point, there are at least 8 or 9 crash survivors who have been brought in. The first 2 victims were brought in by helicopter, a 60-year-old man who was severely burned, according to hospital officials, and a 16-year-old man with abrasions. Shortly, just a few minutes ago, one of the paramedic units brought in 4 people.
Familiar with it, where is that blood donor center? Where should people go?
Okay, I'm gone.
Yep. Dennis Johnson is gone. We have lost him on the telephone. We'll get that information for you. If you are a potential blood donor, the Parkland Blood Donor Center has asked for donations, and we'll give you the address and how to get there in just a moment. Tracy?
Okay, John, thank you very much. Of course, some of the most dramatic pictures that we've been able to see this afternoon, this evening, have come from the airport site itself, where Dave Cassidy continues to stand by. David?
See, I'm going to try to go back to what our witness was telling us earlier, and I'm sure we'll be showing his tape again later describing what happened to him, because as far as he could tell, his car was hit by the plane. Indications are that, if the plane were coming in for a nosedive at that point, the plane would be right out here with us, more than likely, or it would have bounced a little ways. The pilot may have been able to keep control of the plane for a while. And another thing that people are speculating about out here is the dent in what Nan Goplerud told us is the water tower. That's partly obscured now by all the water that the fire department...
This afternoon for DFW Airport, it was a direct flight that was to land at about 10 minutes before 6 o'clock this evening at DFW. It came in during a blinding rainstorm. One person on the ground said that he could only see about 30 feet in front of him. Apparently the plane, as it was coming in, either a part of the plane or the plane itself, touched a couple of cars. One person, we understand, was actually killed in one of those automobiles. And then the plane, as you were able to see, and as you can see here, came on into the field. This is at the northeast end of DFW Airport. We'll be keeping you informed throughout the evening on the latest of the crash scene. Now we'll rejoin regular programming.
Well, we thank the people at WFAA. It is clear now that there are survivors. We're not sure how many, but there are survivors. They've been seen. Survivors from this crash of the Delta Airlines wide-body jet at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. It happened at approximately 6:45 p.m. Eastern Time this evening for passengers. We do not know how many people were on this flight. Delta 191, bound for Los Angeles from Fort Lauderdale with a scheduled stop in Dallas. It was a heavy thunderstorm at the time. There are some of the thunder clouds you can see still lingering in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There are some eyewitnesses who told us and WFAA reporters that they believe they saw lightning, a bolt of lightning, strike the aircraft. Other eyewitnesses said they thought that it bounced 4 or 5 times before it finally came to rest. It obviously disintegrated, came apart. One car was totally destroyed, its driver apparently killed when a portion of the plane or the main part of the plane itself struck the car. Another driver who was not injured said his car was also struck by a portion of the plane. This happened at one of the busiest times for the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, which is one of the nation's busier airports, on a Friday evening. The plane coming from Fort Lauderdale, bound for Los Angeles, crashed on an attempted landing at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. We'll have more for you just as soon as we can, and a complete recap before the end of this hour. Chris.
We will be sure to bring you up to date on other news of the evening, and we will cut into our reports or other packaged news as we get in new video or as we get in new reports on the crash of the L-1011 at Dallas-Fort Worth. In other news tonight,
Just as soon as it becomes available.
We'll be right back.
Crashed on landing at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. We have some videotape to show you now, beginning with the locator. Dallas to the east, Fort Worth to the west. The airport actually in the town of Irving, Texas, where the police chief says there's metal strewn all over the place. Some casualties. We know that at least 11 people have survived. Some have walked into the hospitals there. Others have suffered burns. That is a shot from the WFAA helicopter. The smoke from the crash in the far distance there on the edge of the airport. Now let's go to Gary's update from his helicopter.
Putting him on the stretcher, he says this man walked away from the wreckage, walked up to his own stretcher, and as he was getting on the stretcher, he told Jim that it looked like they hit the water tower and bounced, and I guess that's pretty much confirmed as far as we can tell. We're going to be going now to back to the studio and to some of our other reporters.
The WFAA Channel 8 helicopter there. We've been getting aerial shots from that television station as well as shots from the reporters on the ground.
That's right. To recap, some casualties, some survivors of the crash of Delta Flight 191 at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. It crashed in a blinding thunderstorm. It may have been struck by lightning. We'll have more for you on this and other news as we continue.
We'll have more details for you on this as they arrive here at our CBS News headquarters in New York. This is Bob Schieffer, CBS News.
You in this hour here on CNN. Thanks to television station WFAA in Dallas and to the fine people who work behind us here at CNN. We will continue our coverage live when it's available and when it's necessary. Tape, of course, as well, throughout the evening, and a complete wrap-up for you on the CNN Evening News at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Right now, we'll take a break and be right back on.
Cross into and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which again has been happening through most of the evening and will continue to happen, no doubt about that. There has been speculation at this point that lightning perhaps did play at least a small part or maybe even a big part in all of that. A lot of speculation going on at this time, maybe even some speculation about wind shear, which you get in any kind of big thunderstorm activity where you have winds pulling in 2 different directions, and especially the critical time that the plane was maneuvering. That could be a crucial factor, but I'm sure all of this will surface as time goes along. I'll be back a little bit later on with more weather.
Now that at least 20 persons have died in the crash of Delta Flight 191 as it was trying to land at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. This is a live picture, courtesy station WFAA in Dallas-Fort Worth. Having some problem on the satellite there. We're told now that at least 20 people have died. We're also told, as you watch this videotape of the medical people on the scene, that there are at least 11 known survivors, people who have been taken to Dallas area hospitals, alive, injured, some with burns. We're also told that there were 160 persons aboard this flight.
Ambulances to get there earlier in the evening. However, we are told that as many as 11 survivors have been taken to nearby hospitals. Hospitals have put out calls for additional doctors. It's very sketchy, and we'll bring you further information later this evening.
At least 20 people died when Delta Flight 191, a wide-body jet, crashed trying to land at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport about 2.5 hours ago. Dallas Regional Airport is between, DFW is between Dallas and Fort Worth, of course, in the town of Irving, Texas. The crash happened at the northern end of the airport, which you really can't see on that map. We're told that it happened in a blinding rainstorm, a thunderstorm. There was lightning in the area. Some people say lightning struck the plane. We don't know for sure about that. What you're looking at now is courtesy of
John John. The Parkland emergency room is always busy on a Friday night, so it's been extremely busy now.
Dennis, this is John Criswell back in the newsroom. You were there as some of the victims were brought in, and there were varying degrees of conditions. You described, I think it was a 60-year-old man who was burned and was taken immediately to the burn unit, and yet a youngster, a 16-year-old young man, who apparently had only cuts and bruises. Did anyone, as you were there, as they were coming in, say anything, giving any indication as to where they might have been on the plane, or if they knew what was happening to them as it happened?
Not really, John. We were kept away from asking any questions of them. They wanted to get information of a medical nature right away. But there has been some confusion as to the patients been brought in. Were they all from the plane? Were they from cars on the ground? Hopefully that will be cleared up in the briefing in about a half an hour. We are told that the one fatality was a young child who was brought in by helicopter, the second helicopter flight. According to people at the scene, the youngster was badly burned.
Dennis, we do know of at least one fatality on the ground, that of a man whose car we have seen in several of our tapes and live shots from the airport.
WSB, a spokesman for Delta Airlines.
In a major accident earlier tonight as it was making its landing approach at Dallas-Fort Worth. The number of injuries, possible fatalities, hasn't been ascertained as yet. We're hopeful there are some. Additional information, of course, will be provided to the news media just as soon as we get it from the scene. And we're going to be very, very hard at work for the next couple of hours, but we'll get it out to you as quick as we can.
Mr. Ewing, how many of these aircraft does your airline operate, do you know? I've heard 38.
That's 38 right now, but I'd have to get you the exact figure because we have L-10-11-500s in international service, and I'd have to get you a total.
This plane has a good history, a good
Excellent
safety
history.
record.
It's a marvelous airplane, yeah.
We've heard reports possibly lightning might have struck this aircraft. It was a thunderstorm. Have you heard any details?
Well, that's we've heard that also, but we can't substantiate that yet. But the L-10-11 is a marvelous airplane. It's incredible to me anything like this would happen.
I understand some people in cars that might have been around the airport have also been injured. Is that true?
That's what we heard from KRLD in Dallas, but that's the only way we have to substantiate that.
Has Delta ever experienced an L-10-11 accident prior to this?
Not that I know of.
What about your latest accident of any kind? Do you recall right offhand?
The last one that I recall was at Logan Airport in Boston in 73, July of 73, the DC-9.
Sir, what steps are company officials taking at this time?
Well, we've set up command post over in Dallas-Fort Worth, and of course here in Atlanta too. The major thing we have to do is we have a number of steps. We have to take care of the families involved first. We have to know how many survivors we have, how many fatalities we have. And it's quite an involved procedure involving about everybody in the general office over here and also in Dallas-Fort Worth, and the subsidiary cities such as Los Angeles, which is its destination. And Phoenix, they had 8 passengers inbound to Phoenix. And also Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. So we have an awful lot of people doing the best we can to provide information.
Where is the flight crew based? Do you know? The flight crew, where are they based?
Don't know yet.
Do you know if there were any Atlanta area passengers on board?
Don't know, Paul. I haven't seen that yet either.
And have you already began the process of notifying those passengers that you have been able to identify?
No, sir. We have not been able to identify anybody yet. We just have a tentative name list, but it hasn't been prepared really right yet.
What are you doing with that tentative name list?
Well, we're going to hold on to it until we can confirm it.
Sir, what have your operations people told you about the weather in the area?
Our operations people haven't told us anything at all. I was up at flight control a few minutes ago, but I confess I did not have time to ascertain the weather.